For over 50 years, people have come to see the Sharks play. Talent, skill, speed, intelligence, elite-level athleticism. That's not these guys. Biased, one-eyed, opinionated. More often wrong than right. They make up for their complete lack of talent with pure dribble, gibberish, and enthusiasm. This is the E.T. Stand Podcast.
2003. Ugh, ghastly. Not quite 2009, but hot on the heels of 2002. It was, there's no other way to put it other than horrid. But tonight, there's always an exception to every rule, and this game is that. Welcome to another episode of Classic Chronicles, where we look at a classic match involving the team we're playing against in the current season. In round 7 of the 2025 season, we played the Knights in Newcastle. So tonight, we're going to go back to round 11, 2003 to have a look at Joey versus Noddy and see what happened back then. Welcome back to the ET Stand, as I should have said, the Cronulla Sharks fan podcast that lets us do the football. So right into this one. And Sharks versus Knights at what was then known as Energy Australia Stadium. Most people know it as Marathon Stadium, as it was known from about 1988 onwards. These days, McDonald Jones Stadium, also been known as Hunter Stadium. So quite a few names like Shark Park. So looking at the form going into this one, Sharks were sitting 12th. They opened the 03 season, leading 22-0 after 20 minutes against the Storm. And then we know what happened there. Billy Slater's debut, a double, and a loss there. 6 losses to open the season. There was 2 buys in there. So we went the opening 8 weeks without winning. We had to wait to round 9 where we beat Manly. Those scores, looking at the preceding match there. So we the week before this one, we beat the Bunnies 30 points to 14 on a Sunday afternoon at Shark Park. Brian Fletcher getting a sin bin there for some dissent to referee Matt Chechen, or Matt Check-in. That aforementioned win over Manly to break the drought, the first of the year, 40 points to 16 win over Manly on a wet Saturday night at Shark Park. Prior to that, we lost to the Dragons 28-12 in the return to Cogra, the first game there since I think it was 1999. There was a bye, and we lost to the Knights on a Sunday afternoon at Easter, 32 points to 24. We'd come back from a fair score down to lead with about 10 to go before the Knights kicked away there on a wet Easter Sunday. So that was the form going into it, playing the Knights twice in about 5 to 6 weeks, whilst we also played the Storm twice in the opening 5 weeks or so as well. So interesting draw. Nonetheless, looking at 22 years on, the NRL still has a strange draw. While the Knights were sitting 6th, their preceding 5 matches involved a loss to the Roosters, who were the reigning premiers, a win over Souths, a shellacking against the Storm where they went down to Melbourne and got pumped there, a win over the Tigers, and that win over the Sharks we're talking about. Going into this one, the Sharks had not won at Marathon Stadium since Matt Rogers scored 4 tries in 1995 in a 24 points to 14 win. And there have been 7 matches, 7 losses in the interim. The last match at Marathon Stadium involved a 52 points to 8 win over by the Knights over the Sharks in 2002, whilst the last match between the two clubs prior to this season was the Sharks 64-14 win at Shark Park. So a bit of up and down form there. Looking at the sides, as I just resize my screen here to see the full list, we had Robbie O'Davis, the fullback, the wingers Craig Hall in jersey 17, and Anthony Quinn. Sorry, there's a few spelling mistakes here. Matthew Gidley and Mark Hughes were the centres. The halves, Sean Rudder, Andrew Johns. The front row of Josh Perry, Jenny Baderis, and Matt Jobson. The back row of Steve Simpson, Daniel Abraham, and Ben Kennedy. And the bench of Clint Newton, Luke Quigley, Kurt Gidley, and Matthew Kennedy, the coach, Michael Hagan. While for the Sharks, it's an interesting one. Back 3 of David Peachy, the recently signed Layloa Milford, and Matthew Reek, the wingers. The centres, Andrew Emilio and Phil Bailey in the centres, who'd moved to the centres a few weeks prior. The halves, Jai Mullane and captain Brett Kimmorley, the halfback. The front row of Jason Stevens, Pat Gibson. Number 20, Chris Beattie, coming back from injury, replacing Nathan Vag. And the back row of Paul Gallen, Matt Bickerstaff, Greg Bird. And a bench of number 10, Danny Nutley, dropping back to the bench, Dean Bosnich, Michael Sullivan, and Matt Hilda. the coach, Chris Anderson. Looking at that bench there by the Sharks, so we had Danny Nutley and Dean Bosnich, two boppers, but you'd say they were both similar size. They were nuggety style players. Matt Hilder, a bit of utility, could play hooker, could play lock, could play back row. And Michael Sullivan, also a utility, in that he could play, he regularly came on as hooker and was quite fast and elusive in that regard, but also played in the halves. So an interesting bench, and you'd say, what, two forwards and maybe Matt Hilder, maybe a third forward and a utility, but it was a pretty small bench by the Sharks stands. While Clint Newton was quite large. Matthew Kennedy, I don't know much about. Kurt Gidley was quite dynamic as a utility. So the Knights, they've got a lot of their spine, I suppose you'd say, from winning the competition in 2001, and similar to those that were involved winning the non-Super League ARL comp in 1997, but a bit of turnover in their stocks as well. Darren Albert having left the club to England. Looking at the match itself, the Sharks had a blistering start, racing off to a 14-0 lead through tries to Kimmorley and Matthew Reek. Noddy getting the first of his intercepts, where he gave it to Matthew Reek to finish the job. And then he scored one himself and a penalty goal to lead 14-0. And again, with this one, we'll have to say that the coverage is a bit of a, I suppose, abbreviated version based on memory and news reports, an ABC article or two at the time, due to the lack of coverage from NRL there. There's some highlights that I'll say thanks to the Sharks Club for including one of the tries scored in this match in Kimmorley's recent induction to the Hall of Fame in the montage they showed there. One of them being I think the second or third intercept that he got off three, so giving the game away there. But Sharks up 14-0, but in true Shark style, why have a big lead when you can just give it away just like that? So I believe it was between the 33rd and 40th minute. Sharks gave up multiple tries, and the Knights led 16-14 at halftime. Moving into the second half, Knights extended the lead through a try, I think it was to Andrew Johnson's occasion, to lead 22-14 before Noddy responded again, I think with another of his intercepts to bring it back to 22-20. Then about 14 to go, the Knights were attacking the line, and this is the key event of this match that got all of the coverage after the match. It was Paul Gallen coming out the line and connecting with Sean Rudder. The news reports at the time, I couldn't find any footage of it. I remember seeing it at the time when it happened, though, and it was a send-off. So Sharks down to 12 men. The news reports at the time, an ABC article saying it was a neck-high tackle. Some images that I can't pop on here due to copyright reasons involving Sean Rudder. He was looking very worse for wear and did cop a bad concussion associated with it. So there was definitely some direct contact to the head. So Gallen was gone for the first, and as far as I know, only send-off of his career. Joey Johns took the penalty goal, so interesting decision to take the two there, up by two already, takes the two to go 24-20 up. And with a man advantage, you'd think the Knights were in the box seat to close this one out, especially after coming back from 14-0 down, lead 16-14 at half-time. There was a lot of the commentary was around the Knights just kicking away and the Sharks not even getting a look in. So the Sharks were really pushing poo uphill at this one, for want of a better term. But Sharks get downfield and Matty Hilder scores. Noddy converts, and the Sharks unlikely leaders inside the final 10 minutes, leading 26-24. And then right on full time, Noddy with another intercept runs quite a distance to score, and unfortunately misses the conversion there. The only miss of the night, but it was academic only. That happened in the 79th minute. The Sharks win 30 points to 24. Moving on to the talking points. So Joey versus Noddy. We mentioned it before last year when I did the 64-14 match at Shark Park with Lats. Looking back at that one, 13 matches played between the two. Noddy won 6, Joey won 7. The breakdown, 4 games for Noddy as at the Storm, 1 at the Northern Eagles, and 8 at the Sharks. While he was with the Sharks, it was 4 wins each. So some big scores both ways, but there's a picture of Joey looking quite downcast from the 64-14 match in 2002. Noddy also turning the screws here with this one, getting 3 intercepts. Ironically, all 3 intercepts were off Andrew Johns' passes. So I don't think that happened before or again in Joey's career or Noddy's career in that fact. Looking at the 2003 team, there's a bit of an image there of Matthew Reek and Brett Kimmorley celebrating one of his tries. So 03, yeah, it was quite a comeback down to earth after the 2002 season, and before that 01, 2000, 99, 97, 96, 95. It was ghastly. It was horrible. We used 36 players. The top try scorer was Phil Bailey, who was in the centres with 13. The top point scorer was Jared Anderson with 94. Later this season, Noddy would break his jaw and miss 7 matches. So he played 17 matches in total of the possible 24. Some highlights: Phil Bailey representing New South Wales in the State of Origin season, coming off the bench. David Peachey representing New South Wales country and scoring a blistering try in that one. And Bailey and Noddy representing Australia at the end of the year. But it wasn't much to talk about apart from that. Apart from also, I suppose, plenty of the players that I suppose wanted to wear our jersey during that team, but certainly won't be spoken about in glowing terms, unfortunately, for many reasons. The send-off itself have prompted a quick review of how many times we've had players sent off. I could only find stats for the NRL era. We've had 8 in total. Paul Gallen was the first of the NRL era for a player from the Sharks to be sent off. Unfortunately, that season we would have 2 more in a single match. You guys all know about this one. David Peachey and Dale Newton in the match against the Eels, 74 points to 4. Then we had Greek Bird with his knee on Shane Martini in 2004. Ben Ross in round 2 versus Melbourne in 2008. And Luke Douglas in 2009 versus Manly. That was a very harsh one. He got no suspension. It was definitely a rush of blood to the head from the referee there, but it was a send-off nonetheless and a loss, unfortunately. Paul Ayton versus Raiders for a headbutt in round 1 of 2011 when the game was well and truly gone. We were down by 40. Chad Townsend against the Knights in Newcastle in 2020 when he, I suppose, leapt up and put a hit on Kalen Ponga. And 2022, Will Kennedy versus the Warriors with a high shot while defending at the southern end against the Warriors at Shark Park. So 8 in total. We actually managed to win 3 of these. So this one we managed to win despite Gallen being sent off. The other ones, Ben Ross in round 2, 2008 was a win over Melbourne. A bit of an asterisk there in that Ben Cross, I believe, also got sent off for Melbourne. So it was a late hit by Ben Ross on... or Brett White. Sorry, it's Brett White that got sent off. So Ben Ross had the left the elbow out on Cooper Cronk after a kick, and then was cleaned up by that Storm player, giving him a clear punch to the head. Both of them got sent off. The other one we won was Will Kennedy versus the Warriors in 2022, which was quite storied given we lost Jesse Ramian too. So for a 10-minute period, we had 11 on 13, but we lost him in, I think it was only about the 15th or 20th minute. So we played the vast majority of that with 12 men as well. So to win 3 out of 8, it's good going, especially in the NRL era, but not something you want to make a habit of. A notable mention of another win where we had a player sent off was the 1978 preliminary final win over the Western Suburbs Magpies. Captain Greg Pearce sent off and unfortunately suspended for the grand final and the grand final replay. The Sharks getting through 14-10 whilst a man down for the majority of that one. Looking at this one, the Knights team, it was still strong, but potentially fading post the 2001 era. Obviously, Ben Kennedy would leave shortly after this one to go play for Manly, and quite a few of their other players would then move on as well. John Morris was in the Knights system. He moved on to Parramatta and then the Tigers and then the Sharks. So the Knights, I suppose the salary cap squeeze was struggling to keep their players. Other players like Bill Peden and Steve Simpson, the like, all retired. So the Knights would then go on to, unfortunately, win the Spoon in 2005, only, 4 years after winning the premiership. So it was a bit of a slide for them, but at the time they were still highly fancied. They'd beaten us at Shark Park only a few weeks before. So it was a good get, and they showed their, I suppose, ability in scoring 3 quick tries before half-time to bring a 14-0 14-0 score from behind out to a halftime lead, and probably should have run away with it if 1 or 2 of Joey's passes had stuck. It would have been a quite comfortable win to the Knights, but it didn't. Noddy managed to pick them off each time and got the result. Looking at the 03 season, there's a picture of Chris Anderson there, unfortunately. So highlights, this win over the Knights was definitely one and was probably the biggest highlight that season so far. And then we beat the Broncos later that year, 20 points to 10 at Shark Park. That was in round 21. That was the game where Brett Kimmorley ruptured his testicles, quite infamous now. So if anyone's ever going to say that Noddy didn't provide for the club, I point them to see that game. We might cover that one at another occasion. We ended the Dragons finals hopes late in the year. That was round 23 with the 25 points to 16 win at home. Michael Sullivan having a blinder in that one. And put 54 points on Souths, which was only, I think it was the third time or fourth time in our history to breach the 50-point barrier in the second last round. That was at the Sydney Football Stadium. The final score was 54-34, so defence wasn't high on the priority list for both of those sides, but it was good to get a win nonetheless after the 74 points to 4 losses to the Eels the week before. Low lights, everything else, giving up a 22-0 lead at home in round 1 against Melbourne, the opening the season with just loss after loss, the way that Dean Treester and Nick Graham departed, and everything else that went on that year. The 74-4 loss, and one particular low light was a 20 points to 0 loss at home to Penrith, where Preston and Marty and John Lang all returned to Shark Park, and Preston got a try. And obviously the Panthers were very, I suppose, deserving premiers later that year. But at that point in time, I remember that that hurt a lot. Moving on to the wrap up and some other notes from this match. So Robbie O'Davis was playing his 200th match there and had come back after a pretty bad facial injury. So he did well to get back and score a try. This was Noddy's second career hat-trick. His first was for Melbourne, ironically, against Newcastle in Melbourne in round 13, 2000, a 40 points to 4 win. And total hat-tricks were 3 in his career. So there was this one, the one in Melbourne, and his third and final being 3 tries in the 68 points to 6 record-breaking win over Manly in 2005, which we'll cover in a few weeks' time. The final scorecard was Cronulla Sharks 30, Brett Kimmorley 3 tries, Matthew Rick and Matthew Hilder the tries. Brett Kimmorley 5 from 6 to beat the Newcastle Knights 24, a double to Danny Badiris, 1 to Robbie O'Davis, another one to Andrew Johns, and Johns kicking 4 from 5. The Sharks season, hot on the heels of winning 3 in a row, would go home to face the Canberra Raiders on a Friday night at Shark Park, and everything pointed to a Cronulla win. I mentioned it on the episode, I think it was a Tuesday night episode 2 weeks ago, that was a heartbreaking loss because we gave that one up with a late try. I can't remember who scored it, but the Sharks, I think, scored 3 or 4 tries, and the Raiders only scored 2, and Clinton Schifofsky kicked a whole stack of penalty goals to keep them in touch, and the Raiders snatched that one from us, and that triggered another losing streak. We finished the year in 12th with 8 wins and 16 losses, while the Knights finished 7th with 14 wins and 10 losses. So Knights on a bit of a slide, but were still obviously finals worthy, while the Sharks were just lurched from different drama to the next and loss to loss, especially after prelim final appearances in 01 or 02. Or 01 and 02 was a bitter pill to swallow. But this one was a good win and a great performance from Brett Kimmorley. So hopefully we get a similar win, hopefully a bit more comfortable this week in season 2025. And we'll see you soon for both our debrief episode and live show on Tuesday. In the meantime, up Cronulla, go Sharks.
For over 50 years, people have come to see the Sharks play. Talent, skill, speed, intelligence, elite-level athleticism. That's not these guys. Biased, one-eyed, opinionated, more often wrong than right. They make up for their complete lack of talent with pure dribble, gibberish, and enthusiasm. This is the ET Stand Podcast.